Chapter 1, Mishnah 4. The end of the last Mishnah said that we find mixed groups that cannot be treated like one large group, whether they are for one type of obligation or for two, whether they are separated by one woman or by two. The Mishnah now explains these terms in detail. What is meant by for one type of obligation, where this first group of pairs was separated for childbirth obligations, and this second group of pairs was also separated for childbirth obligations? Or where this first group of pairs was separated for a ziva obligation, and this second group of pairs was also separated for a ziva obligation? These are examples of groups of pairs separated for one type of obligation. And what is meant by for two types of obligation, where this first group of pairs was separated for childbirth obligations, and this second group of pairs was also separated for ziva obligations? The Mishnah explains further. What is the case of for two women, where this first woman had on herself childbirth obligations, and this second woman also had on herself childbirth obligations? Or where this first woman had on herself ziva obligations, and this second woman also had on herself ziva obligations? These are the cases of two women for one type of obligation. These groups can never be treated like one large group because they were separated by two different women. And what is the case of two women for two types of obligation, where this first woman had on herself childbirth obligations and this second woman also had on herself ziba obligations? These groups certainly can never be treated like one large group because not only were they separated by two different women, but they were also separated for two different types of obligation. Another Tana holds that there are times when two groups can be treated like one large group, even if the two groups were separated by different women, and even if they separated them for different types of obligation. Rabbi Yossi says, if two women bought their obligatory pairs mixed together, for example, each woman was obligated to bring a pair of birds, instead of each one buying her own pair, they pooled their money and bought two pairs together for both of them. Or if they both gave the money for buying their obligatory pairs to the Kohen in charge of selling the birds in the Beis HaMikdash, and he gave all 4 birds for the 2 women to the Kohen who will actually offer them, then for whichever woman the Kohen who actually offers them wants, he can offer any of the birds as a chatas. And for whichever woman the Kohen wants, he can offer any of the birds as an olah. Olah. That is, all the birds in the mixture are treated like one large undesignated pair. The Kohen can take any bird and offer it as a chatas or as an olah for either woman. Everything will be valid as long as in the end he offers 2 of the birds for one woman, one as a chatas and one as an olah, and 2 of the birds for the other woman, one as a chatas and one as an olah. And this applies whether the women were giving the money for one type of obligation or whether they were giving it for 2 types of obligation. Rabbi Yossi refers to where the woman stipulated when buying their pairs together that either pair could be used for either of them. Since they made this stipulation, none of the birds became assigned for either woman or either obligation until the bird is actually offered.